In our modern era of constant change, where things quickly become outdated, it's easy to see why many would also see the Bible written thousands of years ago as also being outdated. Well, in this video, I'm going to offer you two main reasons why that's simply not the case. Hey everyone, this is Mark Leeming from Segue to Reason, where you can learn right now things that have often taken me many years to learn myself. So if this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. A friend of mine recently had a non-Christian coworker tell him that, well, he might take Christianity more seriously if, well, the Bible was a little bit more up to date with today's times, and that's a common assumption among many people today. Because after all, how could a book written thousands of years ago still be relevant today? But before we jump to that conclusion, we need to ask ourselves, well, why was the Bible written in the first place? What is it trying to tell us? Well, I think that if you could boil the Bible down to two main points, it would be these. Number one, the Bible is a description of God's nature, of who He is. And number two, it's a description of human nature, of who we are. So if either one of those two things, God's nature or human nature, have changed in any way since the Bible was written, well then yes, the Bible would be outdated. Now, assuming that God does exist, well then He's had plenty of time for self-evaluation and navel-gazing. For example, scientists say that the universe is approximately 14 billion years old, and if you were to compress those 14 billion years down to a 1-year time span, well, that would mean that since the last letters of the Bible were penned to the present day would only be several seconds. How likely do you think it is that during those last few seconds, the Almighty has been like, oh gee, I didn't realize that about myself. Yeah, I need to change. And we're not even talking about time prior to the Big Bang. So assuming that God does exist and assuming that the Bible is meant to give us an accurate description of who He is, then I think it's highly probable that what the Bible says about God doesn't need to be revised or updated. So what about human nature? Has human nature changed in any way since the last letters of this book were penned? Well, that should be easy enough to verify. We have a vast historical record spanning thousands of years up until the present day. We, with our technology, have the ability to know what's going on in just about every corner of this globe. And what all the empirical evidence would seem to suggest, what all the data would seem to suggest, is that, well, no, human nature hasn't changed at all. Unfortunately, one side effect of all the technology that we're immersed with on a daily basis is that we do tend to look through all of life through that prism that newer is better. So when someone comes along advocating a supposedly new way of looking at sexuality or gender, our knee-jerk reaction is to accept it because, hey, newer is better. The great irony in all of this is that many of these so-called new ways of looking at gender and sexuality aren't really new at all. They were widely practiced as the Bible was being written. And so as our culture regresses back into those old ways, it makes the Bible just as relevant as the day it was first penned. Now, as many of you know, that through the month of September, I'm trying to cover issues that many of our college and university students will be facing during their first month back to school. And next week, I'm going to be dealing with, is there a meaning to life? So if you know a college or university student who would like to see that, please let them know. And please subscribe, and I'll see you next Thursday. Okay, get it? Get it?